like tootling along, like, yeah, we got this. And then, oof, it was hard.
Oh,
But we did it. Good.
did it. Now it's all in the rear view mirror.
Mhm. We for sure want to do rim to rim. So that may hopefully next year they'll just open that other side. And
That'll be great. McCall, should we get started or are we anticipating some more folks joining?
I do anticipate more. I only heard from one or two people that they weren't joining, but that's not to say that we can't jump
Okay.
in. I actually anticipate this going fairly quickly today. Um, but yeah, we can jump in. Okay. Do you want to kick us off, Caitlin?
Sure. Well, it's good to see everyone. Thanks again for taking time to be a part of this advisory council. We really appreciate it. And we'll just get started. I'll go through roll call knowing not everyone's on yet, but we'll just, Sarah, as you're doing minutes, you can just kind of know who's joining. But I'll just go through the list in alphabetical order. And then if you'd like to, introduce yourself or say anything else, you're more than welcome to. If you don't, that's okay as well. So first on the list is Nora Barney.
I just want name and like job.
You can
Yeah.
just say
Okay.
here, hi, or
Nora
whatever.
Barney here. Hi, everyone.
We'll just get it for the record. Hi, Nora. All right, Lori. Doesn't look like Lori's on quite yet. All right, Ann Penn Cox.
Ann Penn Cox, present.
Awesome. Karen's not on yet. Colette.
Colette Getton, present.
Marissa's not on yet. Marie Judish.
Hello, Marie's here.
Christine.
Good morning, everyone. Christine Lux, Montana State University.
And Lance isn't on yet. Hi, Christine. Melissa Nicola Kakos.
Here.
You're here. Hi. Doug Reisig, he's not on yet. So, okay. Melissa Romano's on yet. And then Doug Rosberg.
Doug Rosberg, present.
Hi, Doug. And Nicole. Doesn't look like Nicole's on quite yet. And then Allison.
Hi, Allison Wilson. I'm here.
Great. And I'm Caitlin Jensen. I'm here. McCall, do you want to introduce yourself and Sarah?
McCall, I am here.
Sarah Brokey here as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. We have like McCall said, we have a couple items that we're going to be working through that are our follow-up from the meeting that we had at the end of August. And then we'll be just wrapping up a few loose ends. And so we'll go ahead and get started. But thanks again for joining. And if you have any questions, just feel free to raise your hand or chime in. I'll turn over to you, McCall.
Perfect. Thanks, Caitlin. In your packet, you will see, and here's Lori putting her in now. In your packet, you'll see the minutes from our August 27th meeting. They are jam-packed. We have a lot of really great discussion. Just wanted to see if anyone had any correction on those minutes before we put them in the record. No corrections. Awesome. We will put those in the record. Thanks everyone for reviewing those. All right, let's jump to where we left off on our work from our last meeting. I think had we had 20 more minutes, we probably would have been able to knock the rest of this out. But we just did not have enough time. And frankly, I wanted to make sure that you guys had time to finish your discussions and really give it the time that it deserved without feeling rushed to, really have the time to think through the early childhood education standards and give it the time that it deserved. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up that class size and kind of go through those again, where we left off, and then finish the rest of the early childhood education standards. That's what our goal is here today. And then we are going to review those two documents that we didn't have a chance to look at last week. That's the screening tools crosswalk in the skills progression table. And then we're going to revisit the early childhood education document as a whole to form consensus on that document as a rulemaking package. And then we'll talk about next steps. And then these will be brought to the Board of Public Education at their November 19th through the 21st board meeting as sort of the second phase of the rulemaking package. And at that meeting, they will go out for rulemaking, and we will get started on this sort of second phase of the early numeracy evaluation methodology and changes to the early childhood education standards. So very exciting, I think, to get working on this. So let me share my screen and we'll get going on the where we left off with our last meeting. Anyone want to jump in before we get going on this? All right, not seeing any hands up. Let me make sure I pull up my waiting room just so I don't miss anyone either that pops in here. All right. Everyone see that okay? Awesome. All right. So, excuse me, this is where we left off last time. And this is, I believe, where we sort of found ourselves in the discussion. We decided to remove some of the language that was somewhat confusing about the exceeding the maximum class size, the rate at which you could exceed the maximum class size, the student overload, and then also separating the sections so that it was abundantly clear of, or separating it so that it made a little bit more sense and it wasn't sort of one big section. And so I'm going to read this and then we can sort of have a discussion. So 1 says there must be 1 appropriately licensed and endorsed teacher for 10 students, up to no more than 18 students in a classroom with 2 adults. 2 says with classrooms exceeding 10 students, an early childhood paraprofessional is required to be prorated at 1/8 for each additional student for up to 8 additional students. At 18 students, 1 appropriately licensed and endorsed teacher and 1 early childhood paraprofessional are required. Thoughts, questions, comments? We'll open it up to the group now.
So it's Allison. So just to clarify on the second one, can someone help me who is in the school district help me understand what the 1/8 means? Like, so essentially, what does that look like in the day as far as a requirement, like of who is actually in the classroom if it's not a full person?
Because I'm an English teacher, not a math teacher, I'm going to
Thanks,
round
Lori.
up, right? So if students were in class 8 hours, which they are not, 1/8 would be you'd have to, if you have 11 kids, you'd have to have a paraprofessional in there for an hour. If you had 12 kids, a paraprofessional for 2 hours, right? If you have 13, 3 hours until you get to 18 and you got to have them the full 1 person in there the full 8 hours. Again, acknowledging the class is not 8 hours long. That was just my mathematical.
That is actually really helpful. Thanks for that explanation. Is this, and then just to clarify, because it could also be that I misunderstood what was previously in there. Is this a is this language modification from last year? Did we not, or did we previously have beyond 10, there was always a second adult? So this is cutting that back by an 1/8, I guess, or whatever. Is that
so
correct?
It did say that. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I mean, what I felt like we learned last time is that different school districts were totally on different pages with the language last time. Like MCPS was like the minute you hit 11, you get another full-time person. But that was not the case from what I gathered, like talking to other people on this committee. And I think the goal was to just make this more clear and obvious what the exact expectations were.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess my 2 cents that I'll throw in here is when I think about considerations for ratio, I'm considering, issues of safety primarily, especially for 4-year-olds, knowing that the classrooms are different across um, different buildings, whether there's a bathroom there or not. Also, just the differences in development for what 4-year-olds to 5-year-olds look like. And so, I guess I don't. For me, it's hard to understand why we would assume that it would be okay ratio wise to have them like 7 hours versus 8 hours or 6 hours versus 8 hours, whatever. When we don't know we can't control what happens during those absent hours of not having kind of on par ratio with what national standards are.
McCall, is it okay if I go?
Yeah, please do.
I think our main discussion was here is that for accreditation purposes, along with all of our other classes, and now this one's in there for funding, we got to meet the ratios. It's always been, if you go over, you have to have the paraprofessional proportionally. It's not if you go over. So like if a 5th grade class has 31 students and is only allowed 30, you don't have to have a paraprofessional in there all day. You got to have it proportionally to the hours. So that's, I think Doug was saying, so many people, this is how they were doing it because that's how all other grade levels are. And it was moving it to that proportion. And then I think that just like in any other grade level, I mean, with ours last year, I think we had 17 and we left the person in there all day because it just didn't seem like a good idea not to. But I don't think there's any intent not to do a good job here. I don't think there's any intent to risk. I think that it meets the same standards that are set for Montana for other classes.
Yeah. I hear that and totally understand that that perspective. I think and I know 100% there's none of this is about ill will or bad intent of what's not best for kids. That being said, I think that developmentally what happens for 4-year-olds in a classroom is really different than a classroom of 3rd graders, of 4th graders, of 5th graders, even 1st graders. And I could not truly imagine being a classroom teacher of 17 4-year-olds in one classroom all day.
Yeah, but you never would. You would have at that one, at our example, you'd have 7 hours of a paraprofessional. Again, I know that's not the right hours, but if you had 17 kids, you're going to have 7/8 of a paraprofessional in there.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm thinking I'm in our classrooms all day and like you don't know when something's going to happen. Like if you've got 12 and so then you've got a paraprofessional for 2 of your 8 hours, let's say, what happens in the other 6 if there's an incident or I don't know. To me that this and I am not coming from a school district lens. I'll be very apparent on that, but what I see is just from national standards of what is developmentally appropriate for ratio wise. This one's hard for me to feel good about.
Christine, do you want to go?
Sure. I just wanted to add in there, Lori, I really respect and appreciate how you said everyone wants to do the right thing here. And I think that and as Doug pointed out too, in districts who have the resources, Bozeman is another example of that. Once you hit that 11th, there is a full-time para there. And then with respect to existing law, I wonder, and again, this is obviously the closest look I've taken to administrative rule and don't know what that language is in that section around elementary classrooms. When being part of the conversation last time, our intent is always, yes, anyone over 10, we would love to have a full-time support person there too. So there's 2 adults all day with that 11 to 18 group size to maintain that quality assurance and that ratio and the developmental appropriateness. What I wonder is by specifying the prorated at 1/8, even though that is that's the formula in our rulemaking, Allison brings up a good point that it's having that 1/8 for a group of 10-year-olds is very different than having a 1/8 for a group of 4-year-olds. And I wonder if specifying it in this way, does it call out and diminish the intent that we all collectively agree on, is having children's, especially knowing that these are early intervention based classrooms, if we spell out that 1/8, does that diminish our intent? And so it's trying to navigate. That's where I try to wrap my mind around this, is trying to navigate upholding the law, maintaining consistency with rulemaking across our P12 systems, but also not diminishing that intent. I don't know what the solution is. And so I was both looking forward to this conversation today, and I'm so curious to see where we land, because what I want in my mind is to have 2 people full-time. And the reality of that, I know, is not a reality for many of our districts.
Yeah, and Christine, I don't disagree with you at all. I would love to have 2 people full-time. I just don't want us to not operate programs across the state, because this group makes it financially impossible.
Right.
And I would rather have a teacher with a paraprofessional for 3 hours for 13 kids than not have the program for any kids. And I think that's what we're going to risk. I mean, I did the numbers on ours after we got off last time, and we lost a significant amount of money on our early program last year. So we're running in the hole right now at $56,000 loss, and the paraprofessional is a chunk of that money. And so I don't know how long we can continue to sustain that. And I don't want to give up the program where if we have these proportions like we do with all of our other ones, understanding that we're all trying to do a good job. And there are times, like I said, last year, we put ours in there full time, even though it was only 17 kids, because it was what's best, and it wasn't going to save us anything for that 1/8. But I worry about having no program. What is the minimum best we can do versus the best? And I don't want us to agree to poor, right? But I think we need to set the minimum, not the golden standard. And I agree the golden standard would be to have 2 people in there. I'd love to have 2 people in kindergarten too. Man, I don't know how teachers do 1 on 20. I just don't know how they do. I don't know how you do it. But I think if we keep going for the golden, we're going to lose this program that we fought so hard for schools across Montana to be able to offer.
I'm going to go to Representative Nicola Kakos and Penn, and then Lance.
So, excuse me, sorry. Lori, since you did kind of run the numbers, at least on your school side, did you have a number that you hit where the aid, it made sense to keep the aid in there full time? Like you said, at 17, that 1/8, you kept it there, but like, was there a lower number I know it never actually pencils out as being a positive or even breaking even, but like, was it a lower number, like 14 or 15?
No, I did. And in fairness, I did not do it that way. I just knew, man, 17, you can have them. And now if I were in that circumstance and we were sitting at 14, I would run the numbers, but because we're getting paid in arrears, just like all A and B, right? We funded this program ourselves the first year. So right now on a whole, we're running at a negative $256,331. Now we'll get a whole chunk of that back next year, right?
Yeah.
But we're running at a deficit already to be able to offer this very good program, and anything we can do to not make it more financially strapping, I think is important.
Oh, I agree. And I do think that, like you said, like Missoula, Bozeman, they kind of have a little bit more resources there. But for our more rural schools, like, it is kind of important that we allow this flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ideally, yes, once you have a classroom of 4-year-olds should probably just have 2 teachers in it. Well, 1 teacher, 1 parent, no matter how many kids are in it, if you want to do it the absolute best way. But, that is not quite how our funding system works, though hopefully maybe we can make some changes with that next session after this decennial study. But I do agree that we probably should put some sort of minimum. And I think this clarifies the math on, saying 1/8 as opposed to the very complicated wording where it sounded like you could almost get up to 25 kids in your classroom, which would be very concerning for me personally as a early educator, because that's way too many 4-year-olds in one classroom. So I think we're on a good track here. And I think school districts will, like you said, they have the good intent. And I think we have to just kind of trust them.
And then
Yeah, I was just gonna offer just a different kind of standpoint. But first acknowledging that, Livingston will continue to operate anytime we have 11 to 18 kids. We'll add a para for safety reasons. That's just kind of been our philosophy in this way. And also weighing like the outcomes of these students and the intent of the bill, wanting to make traction towards reading and math proficiency. I think it is next to impossible to run small groups with one teacher and a little bit of a para. But that aside, I will say boots on the ground. Each year, we have to layer in each of our ELP classrooms an additional 1 to 2 paras over and beyond the classroom para that is in there. And that is to meet the unique needs of the students who might qualify for a 504 or for an IEP. So Allison and Christine, if that helps give you maybe a little peace of mind, I don't think we're unique in that way. I would assume other districts are also having to layer on additional paras above and beyond that one. I just wanted to offer that perspective as well.
Lance. Welcome, Lance.
Hey, I'm sorry I was late. I was on another Zoom and it ran
problem.
over until I literally said, I'm gone. So
Thanks for
sorry
joining.
about that. I just wanted to reiterate the support for the language you've got here. I think it's close to what I proposed last time around. One thing I would suggest is that you have a slight change where it says at 18 students, and I would put a minimum of one appropriately licensed and endorsed teacher and one early childhood professional are required. Reason being that you might have 2 teachers, for example. And if you've got 2 fully licensed teachers, you've got room for 20 kids. And they may be gathered in the same classroom, but it's just another way of skinning the cat. And I would not want this to be sort of a static, this is what you must have, but rather that it's a minimum. And I also think, even though I understand what everybody's saying about the necessity of the ratios here, we should not be unmindful of the fact that we're effectively pushing districts that you can't do this unless you've got a full-time program. So is that necessarily the best thing for a 4-year-old? I don't know. I think you'd get a variety of opinions from a variety of people in that regard, but there's no way this thing pans out at a half-day program with the ratios you've got here. And I also think that we need to be cognizant of the fact that you may be getting into the area where you're going to have that cost analysis in the fiscal note and the delayed implementation until the end of the next session and so on and so forth. But it's straight up. If you run a full-time program, you got $64,000 for 10 kids. And that does not cover the average teacher salary and benefits of a teacher in Montana, without any consideration of any other costs like allocation of building, all of the typical indirect charges you have associated with any classroom whatsoever. This one's bare, and when you have 18 kids in there, you're now up to 2 staff. You've probably got 1 teacher with salary at around 60 on average and a parapro at around 30 on average, and you're significantly upside down on this thing. So I'm at peace with what we've got, and I hear loud and clear from the practitioners of the importance of ensuring quality, but at some point there has to be an alignment between the requirements here and the funding provided. And I hope that you'll all be just right there, right with me at the podium, one after the other, in person, not on Zoom, testifying in support of 1 1/4 A and B for each of these kids without regard to a Jumpstart program, because that's what's needed. So I hope there's just as much enthusiasm from the practitioners when it comes time to paying the bill as it is when we're talking about the minimum standards upon which the basic system of free quality schools is built. which is what the accreditation standards are.
Allison, and then I'm gonna turn it back to you guys to chat about the additional language.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for everyone's perspective. Any decision that I make or any place of opinion that I come from is anchored in expertise in child development and early childhood education methods and early childhood special education. And I mean, it's a child first decision for me personally. And so I hear what y'all are saying about operational. We have these conversations. I have these conversations with our lab school director every single year. The budget issue is not unique to private programs, and we follow that 1 to 10. In fact, we have run classrooms in the summer at 1 to 10 and not over because we can't afford to pay for the second person. And part of that decision is not just because of quality or safety, but it's just anchored in what we know about development. I hear the point of, in many cases, there might be paras in the classroom. Those are for kids who are already identified or receiving particular support needs. We identify 3 to 4 kids at risk who we never even thought of identifying in our 4-year-old classrooms, because that's just the window of when those needs show up, especially when they get into a room of other peers. And so I just think that my challenge with this language is that it just doesn't account for what you don't know about kids in a classroom, and that worries me because it's not just a cog in a machine. I mean, there's a lot of things to be considered that can happen, and so that's all I have to say about it. But yeah.
McCall, I'm gonna jump in and just reiterate, we're all here about kids first. Me too. So, I kind of object to that characterization. I'm not the guy sitting over here doling out the money without any concern for quality. What I'm actually interested in is that there's actually a classroom stood up that's providing service to kids. And if you're identifying kids, the moment you do so, the obligation of identifying them and providing them FAPE attaches that moment. So if you're not identifying those kids, you're not doing your job.
Well, so, and I'm not characterizing anyone as not being child first. What I'm saying is that that's the perspective I'm coming from. And there is such a thing as because you can have a classroom out with 10 kids. So I'm not saying that there should be all of this or nothing. There is the opportunity there. And that's where my opinion is coming from. And the moment that you begin to screen a child, there's a 45-day period. It's not just immediately. There's a lot of logistics that happen there, but
I'll give you some case law if you're interested.
So Lance, I'm not interested in a particular debate with
well,
you.
then don't attack other people serving on the commission.
I'm not attacking any single person whatsoever. I am fully stating my opinion on this particular language, which is anchored in my expertise and my knowledge as an early childhood expert, and I'm entitled to that opinion. And everyone else is also entitled to their opinion. I'm not throwing anyone out under the bus or saying anyone has any ill intent, but I think it's okay to disagree. And it doesn't suggest that we don't have a common goal of supporting young children and families through free access to 4-year-old programming in the state of Montana.
I'm glad to hear you clarify that you didn't mean what you said, because the suggestion was that others here are not in a child first mentality.
That's
you
finished
talking, now you can let me talk.
I'm being attacked right now, and that's
because we come from the point of view of trying to figure out how to put this thing together does not mean that we are not child first.
Lance, I think all of us are here because we believe in all of us are here because we believe in what was passed. I think we all believe in the goal of getting early numeracy off the ground. We all believe in ensuring that that there are classrooms available for students. And I think that we need to sort of keep that front of mind. And I don't think that arguing with one another is helpful to the discussion. So I would just
Nor do
ask
I,
that we-
McCall, but nor do I
Okay,
think it's
Lance.
appropriate to have to
I
sit
know.
silent and take that. Sorry. I'm a member of this commission. I have a right to speak and deliberate, and it's not
understand.
appropriate to cast some of us in this light as though we're sitting here over in the corner trying to cut some sort of a deal and don't have kids first in mind. And I object to that characterization. It was implied, if not explicitly mentioned as such. And I just don't have to sit here and tolerate that. And I'm not going to. Or you're free to tell me not to join. I'll be off of here in about 5 minutes if this is the way that we engage
There's no
in
deals
dialogue.
to cut. We're all in this together. There's no deals to cut. We're all doing the work together. That's the goal here. Okay, Colette.
My suggestion, or I guess my feeling about this is I think that we can reach a common ground in the way that if we recognize as a district that we don't have the staff to support more than 10 children, that we could have classrooms of 10 children. And then if we had the resources to have the 18, then we would pursue having more enrolled. But in my mind, doing a class of 10 and having it high quality is kind of that middle ground but then I hear you saying, I think Lance said specifically the amount of money a district generates for just 10 children, and there's so many other additional costs that would still be not enough money to pay the teacher. But I just feel like maybe that's that middle ground that we acknowledge, okay, 10's the best we can do to do it well. And then the districts that have the resources to do the 18 that could do that too. And that would maintain this language that we have, but rather than doing 18 and not feeling like it was the high quality that we were shooting for, to just acknowledge that as a district and hire one teacher, high qualified, and cap enrollment at 10 and do something as opposed to nothing and do it well.
Lance, go ahead.
If you cap it at 10, based upon the preceding convoluted language, which clearly authorized additional staff prorated for additional students, you've got a tremendous increased cost of this proposal that has to go through the legislative process with a fiscal note and a delayed implementation until the end of the next legislative session.
Can you
Christine?
repeat that, Lance? I think I lost you. Say what you said one more time.
Who, me?
Yeah, I didn't follow. I lost you.
Take a look at the original language that we're proposing to change. And if the change were to go in the direction as just suggested, where we would just cut off any ability to go above 10 with additional staffing prorated, this proposal would be significant in its cost within the meaning of the provisions in the code that require a delayed implementation until the end of the next legislative session. And we'd be basically at a standstill, sticking with the original language under which people are already prorating parapros and will continue to do so.
Christine?
I think as I sit and I listen, and I know that these conversations are incredibly difficult. We've all been invited to participate in this because we're representative of what we might hear at a Board of Public Education meeting and just having these different spaces. What I've struggled with administrative rule is, and this participation in these groups has really helped me to see this, is that where is a minimum requirement? Because we can't capture an entire lifetime of understanding children first in administrative rule. It just, that doesn't happen. We can all go in with that intent. And I think about, Lance, you brought up that, 1 1/4 A and B. The bottom line here, it costs more to run a program for 4-year-olds. I think we all can agree that. So when we try to put guidelines and need to put guidelines into administrative rule of 1 to 10, hoping that from a teacher education standpoint, we are preparing that one person with all the tools and strategies to be able to do this well with children who have identified support needs and likely some unidentified support needs, which then triggers part of the system, more resources and support, which is great. All of us on this council recognize what quality means. And the concern is, and I go back to what I said earlier, is that we run this risk of both spelling out something where that minimum just remains that kind of like that status quo. I guess I just think about interpretation of follow through support for how do we ensure that districts across the state, they're hearing from folks like us to say, once we go over that one, or Lori, as you put it, just like you reach, you understand that group and you being child first, you have that full-time para in there, whether that's with 13 or 16 or 11, whatever that might look like, based on the needs of the group. And I just still have that worry about specification of the minimum requirement. How do we walk away from that with good trust that others outside of this council and across the state are doing this? I think that's where that passionate kind of that space gets, and it gets heated, and it gets, because we are all trying to do the right thing, and there are many paths to get there. I think we all can agree with this ratio of this 1 to 10, max size of 18. That's a win here, because it was before that we were well over that. So I'm choosing to see the positive pieces of where we've gotten to get to a better place of helping to support that teacher and the children in that classroom. This is really tricky. And I feel for the problem that we're all tasked with here of just, we recognize that our 4-year-olds across the state, they need supports and services. Connecting them to our public school systems is the best way to go. How to do that? We need more money to do that. It becomes, this is our focus for that push for, is this effective? Is this working? There's so many questions. And again, I'm kind of just, I'm processing out loud, and I don't have a like, say this, do this, put this in writing. Just trying to take that step back and listen to all of the emotion and the I don't know, just this is hard. It's hard, but yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Oh, and pen. Sorry, slipping around.
No worries. And this might not be possible, and not everybody might agree with this recommendation. That's okay. I was just gonna throw this out there. I seem to recall when we did teacher licensure that we put some sort of like it's preferred that the teacher have a P3 endorsement, but elementary is acceptable. Like, would there ever be space in ARM for us to write in a recommendation from this council that, we do recommend you meet the needs of the students in your room, and if that looks like a 2-to-1 ratio for above 10 students, we recommend you move forward with that. I don't know how to make that sound pretty, or if that's even allowed, but it's just a thought. Thanks for scrolling up to that.
Yeah, I'm looking for that language. Go ahead, Lance, while I look for that.
I think one of the things that you could do is in the delivery of the report of the task force, you could reiterate our collective understanding. I mean, this is well documented. Helena Elementary said it. Columbia Falls said it. The Montana legislature has said it. All of them have said that the accreditation standards are not the full definition of quality, that they do not define either the constitutional rights of children or the full measure of what the legislature is responsible for in the form of a quality education. And we could just identify, I mean, you could truncate that down to, please remind yourselves that these are minimum standards below which you may not fall without regulatory intervention. We, of course, recommend that you do everything within your power to provide the best, most well-resourced and supported classroom as you can. I think that could come in the form of our memo of delivery of the final recommended product to the board, and it would be in the public record then. I don't know. That's one way to do it. But I do think there are times, and not this time, by the way, I have high regard for every one of you, and I'm hearing you tell me, and I believe you, that that 10 is a real strong and important educationally relevant benchmark. But I've been in many rule hearings over the years where we've started talking about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin, and let's make it so in the rules, and going way above the minimum standard. I think it's important for all of us when we do rulemaking or recommendations associated with rulemaking to remind ourselves that that responsibility of the Board of Public Ed ends at assuring the minimum standards have been met and that quality is above and beyond that.
Thanks, Lance. That's a good reminder. Yeah, and thanks for pulling that up too, McCall. I guess the word we used was encouraged. But just documenting that somewhere, again, if the collective majority agree that that's something we want in writing and want to support. Just an idea.
So we did have a bit of a language change. Don't want to forget about that conversation. Lance had suggested that we add this language of at 18 students, a minimum of one appropriately licensed and endorsed teacher and one early childhood paraprofessional are required. You could, as Ann Penn just suggested, include some language that says something about, encouraging something beyond that would get to sort of what Christine and Allison have been saying around what is, and others, what is more in line with maybe best practice, similar to what we did above for licensure qualifications, and use more encouraged language. You could certainly add something like that in 3. If someone had language, you could, I don't have a chat, but I would be happy to drop that real quick. That would also be something that we could consider today. Representative Nicola Caucus.
As far as like the language part of it, I mean, Head Start tends to deal with a lot of 4-year-old programs. Does anyone know what their language is in regard to their ratio number and how they word it? I was trying to Google it, and it wasn't very successful.
I'm trying to pull our MOU. Give me a minute.
I'm trying to pull up the rule real quick.
I just pulled up the program standards for Head Start in the center-based option. Ratios, and we don't have chat, but I can summarize this. Age of majority of children. Program must determine the age of the majority, so we've done that. There's some, they get really specific, brief absences during nap time. There's different rules around that. Class that serves majority. Okay. Teacher and a teaching assistant or 2 teachers. A double session class that serves a majority of children who are 4 and 5 must have no more than 17 children with a teacher and a teaching assistant or 2 teachers. I think that to that point of, 1 license accredited, so you could have 2 license accredited teachers. And then there's a table that shows that. So it's not any more specific. I mean, it doesn't talk about it talks about 2 teachers, but it doesn't talk about like prorated time as we have in our public education system with prorated para FTE.
Christine, where did you pull that from?
I just did, it's 1302.21 center-based option. If you search Head Start program standards ratio, you'll get to that.
Okay. Yeah, I see. Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I see here too. Yeah, I agree. I remember from a long time ago in Head Start days that, yeah, there's not like a proration, but it does say, here's another, the class that serves a majority of children who are 4 and 5-year-olds must have no more than 20 children with a teacher and teacher assistant for 2 teachers. Double session class that serves a majority of children 4 and 5 must have no more than 17 children with a teacher and teacher assistant with 2 teachers.
Lance, did you have an idea?
Only to clarify what Caitlin just clarified, we were talking about a 3-year-old standard, and the 4-year-old standard is 20 kids. Not that that necessarily matters. Head Start is Head Start. This is something different, and although I understand the overlap, but the point is that for the 4 and 5-year-old program, their standard is 20. Also,
Didn't go down that path then.
Yeah.
I don't know if this would meet the suggestion we had earlier, but you could just put in school districts are encouraged to exceed these standards with additional staffing for any classroom with more than 10.
Whoa. Should we say anything about 2 appropriately licensed and endorsed teachers?
Well, this could be when you hit 11. If we keep it general, then what we're saying, as soon as you hit 11, you should get another staff member. I personally would not want to constrain that to say must be a teacher. It could be a full-time parapro, which would exceed these standards considerably. So at least from my standpoint, I kind of like,
Adults.
you know,
Thoughts from the group?
I'd say with additional staffing, then we're not into adults or parapro or teacher, but we're talking about staffing, which in the earlier part of the rule specifically references it can be a combination of both. But we're not talking about bringing in an administrative secretary who has no involvement or anything.
Right.
It's staying tight with the standard.
Lori.
Yeah, I just want to clarify without opening a can of worms. On that very first sentence of where the 1 is marked out and now it's a 2 in blue, with classrooms exceeding 10 students, an early childhood paraprofessional is required. Somebody remind me, does that have to say early childhood? Because, we don't have our paraprofessionals necessarily. This is an early childhood and this one's certified for 4th grade. So I just want to ask that. And then, does it have to be a paraprofessional, or is it like the accreditation thing where it's just an additional staffing? And so I just want that clarification, because in accreditation, it used to say paraprofessional if you went over for like the kindergarten, for example, and now it says additional adult. I don't have the exact wording, right? But it doesn't say paraprofessional anymore. So I'm just wondering, keeping in line with the minimum, is that additional staffing, or does it need to say additional early childhood paraprofessional? And I know up there in the rule, it's got the early childhood paraprofessional, but that's the requirement for all of them, not just for early childhood. So I'm just trying to understand.
Right. So to answer your first question, we do reference specifically an early childhood paraprofessional. And this is specific to 4-year-olds. It's right here. Right here.
Yeah. But those requirements are the same for all paraprofessionals. So that's why I was asking.
Correct. But this is what we reference in this rule. So I do want to use this language.
Okay.
Because this is what we reference as early childhood. These are the early childhood rules these are early childhood programs. So I do want to use this language.
Yeah, it's status
This is
quo.
specific.
We'd be going backwards if we took that.
Again, I just wanted clarification. I didn't have an argument. Just
yes. Yeah. No. I just want to reference this section that's in here because it is from this rules. And I just wanted to draw your attention here so you knew that this was there. And so then what was your second part, Lori?
Then the second part was, and that makes sense. So I'm fine with that. When we get down here to our new statement, encouraged to exceed standards for classrooms with additional staffing. So, but they have to do additional staffing. So we say encourage, and up here it's you have to. So it just seems conflicting to me.
My intent is with additional staffing beyond the requirements of this rule.
Okay. Yeah, that makes it clear. Then I could throw an extra adult of anything in there as long as I meet the initial rule of having the teacher and the early childhood paraprofessional for any I'm over.
You could have a teacher or an early childhood parapro.
But if I only have 12 kids in there and I only leave the paraprofessional in there for 2/8, I could throw a parent volunteer in there for other hours because it's encouraged.
Yeah, as long as you met the requirements of the rule and anything on top was superfluous. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if my intent was to have, 2 people in there, but I can't pay for it past 12, then I could have any adult in there as long as they meet background check and all that stuff.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Marie.
I just wanted to bring up the 1/8, and someone mentioned earlier that we're actually not programming 8 hours a day. So I just wanted to kind of bring that back to conversation of if 1/8 is the right, or if we go like 1.25 hour or 1.5. I don't have a preference necessarily, but the 1/8 is a little bit tricky.
1/8 is to get you 1 kid per 8. That extrapolates up to the 18.
His math's probably better than whatever I shared.
Well, that's what it is. 1 kid, 1/8. 2 kids, 2/8. And when you get to 8/8, you got 18 kids and no more. I think it works like a glove.
Okay, you should disregard anything I said earlier.
Wait, I might be confused too, Lori. I'm kind of with you. I was gonna take my whole day, like the day our kids attend 8:20 to 2:50, and then take that hour a minute and divide it into 8.
The 8 was about students and not about hours.
That's what I was doing too. Conversation. You might want to back up and give us a new tutorial because I totally botched that one.
Well, it says prorated 1/8 for each additional student. We could say, for example, 11 kids requires 1/8 parapro, 12 requires 2/8. I'm not meaning to laugh. I feel bad.
I'm just trying to figure out what does. I know I feel stupid right now. What does 1/8 equal? I mean, how much time does 1/8 equal? Is what I'm trying to figure out. Look, Ann Penn's like me too.
It's twice as much as 1/16.
Hey, not nice, Lance. If I have 11 kids in there, how long does the person need to be in that room?
1/8.
Give me some minutes.
How many minutes are you doing that day? You've got to do 6 hours of 45 minutes of instruction each to hit 8,100 minutes. And you've got basically each hour gets you an additional quarter A and B, under 29,311 sub 4. So, you've got a crosswalk between the standards that require a 45-minute period. And then you've got the funding, which says 60 minutes, but gives you a specific definition that you can include in your aggregate hours, the time spent passing from class to class, which gets you up to an hour, which is how people claim full-time A and B on a 6-period day.
I think we're still good, Ann Penn. We're just saying it different ways. I think we're good.
All right, let's go back to this. And sorry, go ahead, Marie.
No, you're good. I would just say for accreditation purposes, that's going to be really confusing for everyone who's doing the K-12, don't doing it by an hour and a half. And I understand the math completely, but I think the consistency in how it's said will help clarify that for schools.
What do you suggest?
Well, how we have it for K-12 is the hour and a half per student per day, per student overload. So in 1055-712 section or line 5, the school district must assign qualified human resources that comply with all fingerprints and background check requirements when exceeding maximum class sizes at a rate of 1.5 hours per day per student overload.
Well, now we're back to the
Yeah, but
original
qualified
language.
human resources aren't paras.
No, I'm just reading what 1055-712 said
Yeah.
too. So it's the hour and a half. That is how it, like when I used to do the Teams report, I had to go count how many hours do I have Mr. Labar in this room. So I just know doing it in a different manner is going to be a strain on our schools, and I'd like to make it easier.
You know what's going to be a strain on the schools? Trying to figure out the difference between 1.5 hour overload and 1/8 of a kid and getting to 18. How many parapros do you need to get to 18 kids? Because we've identified conceptually that we want it to be a teacher and a parapro as a minimum to cover that. And in order to do that, you need to be able to know how you're going to break that up. And if you do an hour and a half overload, you're going to be at like 1.7 kids extra. And you're going to go, wow, when do I round up or round down? I think it's more difficult for a district to crosswalk that over than to simply say 1 kid equals 1/8. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think that, the reason we did this, and I will gently rope in our legislative leader here, Representative Nicola Caucus. I think we were both figuring out that you couldn't really mathematically allocate this to get to the overall goal of 1 teacher and 1 parapro and 18 kids with the way we had it written originally. If you write it by the overload, I believe just off the top of my head, you're going to need 1.5 parapros to get to 18. And that's going to be much more challenging to the district than getting out their calculator.
Doug, go ahead.
Well, I just keep thinking through this conversation and the 1.5 hours that maybe we should consider having some sort of system where we get to the full-time para at like 16 instead of the 18, so that we could have a designated number of hours for 11 kids. You get this number of hours, 12, this number of hours. And then by the time we hit, I don't know, whatever the math is, 16, 17, at that point, it becomes a full-time person. I just feel like that would be easier to understand and easier to seek out from the district level.
Lori?
Yeah, I appreciate what you said there, Doug, and it makes sense. So I don't disagree with the sensibility and logistics of it, but I think it rolls us to even stronger than what the original was, which was you could have up to 18. And now if we got to 16, we couldn't have 18 students anymore. And so we lose 2 spots in that class, or we have to add another adult at 17. And so I need every single seat. And so I'm concerned about, we would be rolling back to being even stronger or harsher. I don't know what words I'm looking for.
That wasn't my intent. I was just thinking like the
no,
window.
it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, totally makes sense what you're saying. I just worry about losing 2 seats per class now. If you have to have a full paraprofessional at 16, what about those other 2 kids? Do I have to have a third paraprofessional, or I can't?
No, I'm just thinking you have one if you have somewhere between 16, 17 or 18.
Okay. So
that's
you're
like,
saying
it
can still go to 18, but once it's
absolutely
16, you got to have okay. I understand.
I can live with that. I think I understood that, Doug.
Yeah.
That you're basically saying you get to 16, you got to have 2 for between 16 and 18 kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you can still go to 18.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I didn't want to lose. I mean, the first part made sense. I just want to make sure we can still go to 18.
And I'm just thinking from a district perspective too, that just really helps with, as we have fluctuations in population and all of that, if it's a little bit more of a window than just exactly only 18.
I think it also addresses some of the concerns that some of our early childhood educators have about it getting so big and not having the person in there. So it makes the number a little lower. I mean, I think it's a decent compromise.
And then I think Marie, that it works with 1.5, right?
That was my original thought.
Made best of both worlds. Who knew Doug was such a facilitator? That's awesome.
I'm going to jump into, I think it goes back to my questions originally about like this calculation and formula is we want this rule to ensure that there are 2 adults, 1 endorsed teacher, and a paraprofessional at kid 11, right? And we want to encourage districts, once you hit that 11, like ideally you would have a full-time, but you'd have 1.0 FTE. So if the language of class size and prorated, if that's not in our K-12 rule, then if leaving it as there must be 1 appropriately licensed and endorsed teacher for 10 students with no more than 18 total students, classrooms exceeding 10 students and early childhood paraprofessional is required. Like, do we need to specify like for how many hours and how, like, is that part of the confusion? I guess that's what I was trying to point out earlier, is that giving it this like formula or hours or FTE, is that making it, and I'm asking this honestly, is this anticipating that there are going to be districts of just saying like, great, we have someone for 42 minutes because we have 12 kids at this certain time? Like, I would hope that that's not happening. And so the sentiment that I'm hearing from this group is that in the intent in delivering a high quality program, you are putting in place the FTE that you need. And wouldn't you want to enroll up to that 18 because you get more A and B? I guess it's just, are we kind of going around in circles about the 1/8 and the hours because it specifies at a level that just it makes it hard to understand. I guess I'm kind of back to that space.
Lance?
1.5 hours makes it 90 minutes. So that check the box there. It's familiar with other standards. And so you would have to have 90 minutes for each additional kid overload. And when you got to 16, there would basically be a floating number there that you'd say between 16 and 18, it's with 1 additional person. That's effectively what you're saying, is you're gonna break it out so that you're not gonna do 42 minutes. It's gonna be 90 minutes a day. That's basically two blocks of 45-minute instruction. And so then when you get up to 16 by doing 1.5 times each kid overload, then you basically have your full-time person, and then they get to float there between 16 and 18. But if we don't do that, if we don't prorate that, then what we're going to do is we're going to turn the encouragement into a minimum standard.
So however you just explain that, Lance, with like the 90 minutes, like that, whatever that language is that's understood across what's existing out there should be consistent here. And if this is the language, right?
Yeah, I think you go back to the original language we've got. The school district must assign qualified human resources. I'd clean that up and say, you know what I'm saying, that comply with all fingerprint and background when exceeding maximum class sizes at a rate of 1.5 hours per day per student overload until you reach a second individual, in which case you can satisfy up to 18. I mean, I'm butchering that in terms of how you're going to write it, but that's conceptually what you're saying, is that you're going to do that 1.5 times a 6-hour day. That then, that's four blocks of that are going to equal 1 FTE parapro, and then they can do between 16 and 18.
I just want to clarify because I believe I understand it, but I don't want it to be misconstrued. It says no more than 18. So when the last line says exceeding, an overload of 5 students, that doesn't mean 23, right?
We're not doing that. I'm not adding
Perfect.
I'd get rid of that.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Thanks.
I would suggest that we not even add this in, and instead just work it in somehow into what we have, because I think what we have written here is much more eloquent than and much more clear. And I would turn that back onto you guys sort of as a question for feedback, than sort of what was written. So like with classrooms exceeding 10 students.
So I'm thinking we could say something like, okay, paraprofessional is required to be prorated at 1.5 hours for each additional student for up to 16, or I guess up to 16, and then somehow we have to work
I don't
in
even
what
need to
the
say
16
that,
to
right?
18.
Just say 16 to 18.
Do you even need to say that?
Any class with between, shall be prorated, and any class with between 16 and 18 must have a full-time additional person.
Yeah, that would be the intent.
All right. And then do you so 16 to 18 students, a minimum of one appropriately licensed and endorsed teacher and one early childhood paraprofessional are required. That would be that section. And then with classrooms exceeding 10 students, and then do you need this part?
Yeah, I think we do, but we would say prorated at 1.5 hours for each additional student. I guess would we do up to, I guess we would say that up to
Until 16
5?
until 16 students, at which point 2 full-time individuals are required for 16 to 18.
Okay, help me here. So if you're saying for students 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you have to have 5 times 1.5 hour para a day. Is that a correct interpretation or no?
Yep, so if you had 15 kids, you would have 5 times the 1.5 for your para.
A day, which is not 9 hours a day. I don't know. I could be doing this, or I guess 1.5 times 5 is 7.5 hours a day. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. What if well, okay. I'm just trying to think. Our program runs 6 hours and 50 minutes a day.
So yeah, I hear where you're coming from with this.
Yeah.
So would the cap be 15 then if we did it that way?
That's what I'm wondering, Lori. Yeah, just
I mean,
We gotta make sure the math works.
we
Yeah.
need the numeracy piece of this council to come into play. Apparently,
Well, I know the 1/8 works.
No.
1/8 equals 1 kid. We're back to square one. Tell me you guys don't understand what 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, and 6/8, and 7/8, and 8/8 is.
So the way I would do it, Lance, I'd take 6 hours and 50 minutes, and I would literally divide that by 8. And for each 8th, I would layer in a pair for that time. Does that make sense? So 6 times 60 plus 50. So that's 410 minutes. I would divide that by 8, and I'd have a pair for 51 minutes, a pair for then 100 and whatever 51 times 2 is. For
Well, you're still tied to the 8,100 minutes of instruction.
Mm-hmm.
So you would compute this in 45-minute blocks.
Okay.
So if you're going more than 6 hours a day, you're talking aggregate hours of instruction, including playtime at the zoo, getting in and out, drinking water, whatever.
Yep.
But this is computed on the basis of the gold standard of the Board of Public Ed standards of 45 minutes of instruction for one period each day, totaling up to 8,100 minutes of instruction. So that's the way you'd break that down.
But are we turning this into now? We're going to be down to 15 because we're back to losing all the flexibility.
We got to keep it where it was, or you've got a significant cost based compared to the existing language under subsection 1.
Right. I mean, I feel like you're back to where we started. I mean, I'm much more comfortable with the 1/8 now than I am this, just because I'm losing, and it's going to cost $15,000 more now for 3 kids.
Can we just say 1 hour per day and that solves the 1/8? And it gets us to the same at 16? and to 18.
I love that.
Hey, that's good. That'll work. And then you float 16 to 18, right? Nice.
It's actually, wouldn't it be 17 because you're doing per student overload up to 16 students and then 17 and 18?
I think it's
So
really
17 and 18 are on the house.
So do you even need to call out the 16 to 18? Like, do you even, if it's just prorated an hour per day, because I do agree, like then as you're scheduling your FTE for your paras, like, so then it could be like, okay, they're part of the day here, part of the day there, depending on what that day looks like. Because then I think it just about all of these things with instructional hours and 4-day schools, like all of these different kinds of things. Do you need to even specify the 16 to 18? We've made it really clear, max of 18. Anything over 10, you have prorated 1 hour per day per student.
You'd be increasing the FTE requirements for your parapro to 8 hours of instruction on a 6-period day.
Oh, I see.
It matters. It definitely
gotcha.
matters to keep that float.
Okay. So you need
Well,
that.
6, right? So 11, 12, 13,
It's
14,
6,
15,
6-period day, that's 6 hours.
and then you get 17, 18
Yeah,
on the house. Marie.
That must have been from earlier. I did make a little like graphic if anyone wants to see it, but I put it in a spreadsheet where I can email it to you guys or something that has 1 through 10 is one teacher, then every hour additional up to 16. It shows how many exactly you need. I teams it to Earl, teams it to McCall, and she could share it too.
Let me see. Okay, let me see if I can reshare. Can y'all see that?
And we could change that 1 FTE teacher plus 6 hours a day to 1 FTE teacher plus 1 full-time paraprofessional or something.
yeah, on that 16, just cut off those last 2 rows and say 16 to 18, 1 FTE teacher plus 1 full-time parapro. If you have to, stick it right in the rule, McCall. It'll make it easy for people to understand.
This?
Yeah,
No.
put it in
Not
right in
sharp.
there.
Will Esper take that, McCall?
Subsection A, subsection B. Why not?
Lance, if you had to use Esper, you would be taking that back. All right, everyone take a look.
If it were
let know
me,
your
I would,
thoughts.
okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
You might just drop the S after hours after 1 hours per day.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess it is 16 to 18, right? You're right. Thoughts, questions?
It reads correctly. Says what it says what we've been discussing.
My
Marie?
question is, does it need to say prorated or could it just say at a rate of? Just prorated. That's consistent with the other class size language. I don't know if the context
Well,
has a rate of 1 hour per day per student.
Oh, yeah. Get rid of 2 as well there, McCall.
at a rate of. Okay, how do folks feel about putting this on the back burner for a second? Running through the rest of this, looking at some charts, and then coming back for consensus. All right.
Okay.
Sound good? I'm going to run us through the rest of the early childhood really fast and just show you sort of where the other changes are. They're in line with the other ones, just taking out literacy, some sort of other little things, and then I'll turn it over to you, Caitlin.
Okay.
Under enrollment eligibility, removing literacy. This section here talks about determining evaluation methodology processes outlined in the evaluation methodology sections. We had to add in 903, which is the new early numeracy evaluation methodology. So adding that arm here, adding reading or math, and then removing literacy again here. 110, we actually cleaned up in the previous rule when we did the temporary rule. So this section is actually up to date. So nothing to do here under the developmental domains and content standards. We have already done this section. You'll see in 2 here, we had some folks that made a comment to put math under the ELA sections. So that changed, yay. So you'll see that it goes A, ELA, B, math, and then C is creative arts. So that's very exciting. Curriculum and assessment, I don't believe there's any changes here. Same with under instruction. 113, same here under physical and learning environments. Same with 114. Under 115, there was another one up above that did the same thing. It just said the program. And if you guys remember, we sort of generalized where it said preschool programs and the early targeted intervention programs. We sort of dubbed those the early childhood education programs. So we generalized that. And so I just wanted to make sure that we stayed consistent with the language and added that here. And that was that. Any questions sort of generally here? Again, we're going to come back to this as a whole. Any questions from anyone before I turn it over to Caitlin? All right, Caitlin, do you want to walk through the charts? Do you want me to share those for you?
Yeah, if you want to just scroll down, unless it's another doc, or I can share it too.
It's another doc, but I got it.
Okay. Then I will close this. Okay. And actually, let's start with the skills progression table first.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to walk us through the assessment tools that we've created as a council. And okay, perfect. So starting with this document, so just as a quick refresher, since this has been a couple months, but we really worked to align this process of both the skills progression tool and the assessment tools to what we did with the early literacy program process in terms of developing these resources as well. So just wanted to take some time to walk through both of these resources and documents. Just a couple items of note, as you'll remember when we were developing this, it was a little different because with the early literacy, we defined and determined that there's, the process through like the literacy process was a little bit more straightforward. Hold on one second. Let me just pull my computer's a little glitchy. Can you guys hear me okay? I just got a little notice. Okay. So as we were developing the numeracy skill table, we all decided that we would identify which numeracy skills we would be looking at, and then we went through which it was a developmentally appropriate assessment prior to that grade level. So that's how we then determined within each of those columns for prior to going into the early literacy, the 4-year-olds, for 4-year-olds, and then kindergarten, first, second, and third. So we then use that skill progression table and those determinations into the next chart. So you can just go ahead and scroll down, McCall, or up, thank you. As we were then going through and evaluating each of the various assessment tools. So I guess before I go into this, were there any other comments or questions about just the matrix and those determinations, and did we miss anything?
I do want to say that I know that the one, sorry, I'll scroll back down quick. I
Yeah,
know that
sorry.
it doesn't look perfect because numeral identification is a little off, but there was no other way to make it perfectly flow. But I think it looks pretty good otherwise. But that was one that was really bothering me. Other than that, I think it looks pretty good. Makes perfect sense otherwise.
Okay, so oh, go ahead.
I do see some that we probably missed that have that math composite score, which is just their overall score. So like map growth would have a composite score, Renaissance, Fastbridge, Ameswood Plus. I don't know if anyone else caught that too. Composite is just like the overall, here's where you're at.
So Marie, would it be important as we're finalizing this
They're
to
gonna,
include those?
yeah, I believe all of these would have a composite score because at the end of the day, they're going to say here they're proficient or not. I can do some deep diving on those today and get that back to you, but I want to make sure everyone else would be like largely in agreement. Like you're going to get a composite. My daughter got a RIT score for her math growth. I have it right here, and the RIT score would be the composite score.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. And also, I just want to give a huge shout out to Sarah because she really worked on putting this table together in a way so it would be really clear, and that's great. If there's any other additions, we want to make sure that they're in here, and that's a really helpful clarification, Marie. Thank you. Okay, so going back to this tool, so this was so as you can see on the rows above, we don't have it named, but you'll see just within the skill assessment for 4-year-olds, and then down below it's segmented into the higher grades. And so essentially what we did after the meeting that we had in August is we went through the assessment, the screening tools for 4-year-olds prior to kindergarten, and then also through the screening tools that that were also approved for prior to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and identified where they were hitting the mark within each of those skill assessment areas. So as you can see, there's a quick description, the skill focus area, and then there's the X is if that assessment or that screener tool is identified as meeting the needs within each of those various skill assessment areas. So again, if there's anything that we missed, but I think it was pretty thorough. And then we made sure that the group that was meeting over the summer also had the ability to weigh in as well and make sure that we weren't missing anything. And I guess the one other note too is that, similar to the early literacy tools, every year there will be an opportunity for any other screener tools to be included or added in through a review process with the Board of Public Ed. So if there's anything else that needs to be brought forward, or if there's any changes to any of these screener tools, then those can be assessed at those intervals. But I guess if you guys have all reviewed this too, if there's any questions or anything that we're missing, go ahead, Lori.
I don't have anywhere near as much to offer when we get to this because this isn't my skill set. I look at more from a district implementation. So my question is, I think somewhere in the law it says something about it not being unreasonably priced or something. I can't remember how it's worded. Do we have anything that shares that piece of this without someone having to go to each of these, or y'all are saying, hey, all of these are within a range of X to X. I'm just trying to get it from an implementation point of view, because the reality is we can't buy any of them if we don't have the money. So Just wondering on that side.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, I think that's the challenging thing of the funding part of it. And I think also why it's, local control and districts are able.
But am I right that the law said it has to be, we're recommending, I may have made this up, that
It did say
the Board of Public Ed will recommend.
Yeah,
us
I
that's
can jump in
reasonable?
on this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says it has to be cost effective, but Lori, that was one of the reasons why the Board of Public Ed didn't choose one of the assessments. Not only did the legislature not fund the Board of Public Ed to choose one assessment, it's also one of the reasons why we didn't say, here, school districts, you have to use this assessment.
Okay.
We're leaving it up to school districts to choose an assessment that you determine as cost effective. It's also really difficult to determine whether these are cost effective or not, because other folks can probably speak to this better than I can, but when you go in to determine what the cost might be for some of these, it's sort of all over the map. Like some of them might say, well, it's cost per student, or well, it's cost per number of students, or it's, they may decide, or they may tell you it's cost, the costs vary because of certain ranges, you get this plan, or it's dependent on the screener or the curriculum. And I know others can speak to this, like I said, better than I can, but so it's really hard for us to determine what the cost might be and to put it on like a document like this when, and we don't want that to be out there for others to say, well, Board of Public Ed, you told us the cost was going to be X. Well,
right.
We don't know that for certain unless, you as a district go, you can determine what the cost is. We aren't telling you what assessment you have to use anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I do remember when we were looking into some of the models, it does make it really tricky. It's not apples to apples, like McCall said, and so to put something.
Yeah, some of it's a number range, some of it's per student, some of it's just a program. So yeah, certainly, I just wondered so that I would know the answer to that question. So.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think this is, if you're looking into screeners, you're going to have to go through and have that conversation with each of the tool developers.
For clarification, if I screen them in early literacy first and they qualify, I don't even have to give this screener, right? It's only if I've got kids who didn't qualify that I might want to consider this one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there were four areas that had to be research-based, developmentally appropriate, cost-effective, and if possible, aligned to your formative assessment. Those were the sort of 4 criteria.
Go ahead, Melissa.
And we still have on here that districts can create their own assessments. Is that correct? We still have that option?
Districts cannot create their own assessment, no.
But
they have to be, because it has to be research-based, developmentally appropriate.
But they can use assessment that's not on here if they can prove it's research-based and developmentally appropriate.
Yes.
Yes.
They just can't make their own. Right.
Go ahead, Melissa. Do you have your hand up? Oh, maybe it's just frozen. Or am I frozen? Ah.
Oh, sorry. It's nice and windy up here in Great Falls, and it does not help my internet. So don't we have the other sections that districts can choose kind of their own based one? And I thought on that too, we were allowing them to kind of do their own, but they had to then send it to OPI. I feel like we had that discussion, or am I mistaken? Did we change that?
How we have it is they have to check a box and assure that it is those 4 things, but we do not have a mechanism to audit the tools that districts are using.
But for clarification, a district can't use their own unless they've paid a boatload of money to go make sure it's research-based and validated and all that kind of stuff. They can't just use a classroom assessment, right? Now, you're not auditing it, and whatever they check is their own integrity and professional whatever. But the concept would be if someone's asking us, it's no, you can't make your own. It's still got to be research-based and validated, and you're going to have to check a box saying that it is. It just doesn't have to be on this list. It just has to meet the 4 things. I mean, you can't go use a test out of Wonders. or whatever into math.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then if you want to have, if there's something that's not on this list and you want to have it on the list, then that's where there's the process through the Board of Public Ed where you can submit for review. And then this document will be updated. And this won't be in rule. This will just be a supplemental document that will be available as guidance to school districts. But if this is good enough, we'll add in the suggestions that you send over, Marie. We can move on, but are there any other questions or concerns or additions that you want to make sure are included in here? Okay. Well, if you think of anything else, just email it to the group, but I think that's, oh, McCall, do you want to scroll down? Sorry, I should have. I guess it showed all of them. There's just that second page, but it's in your packet as well. So just let us know if there's anything that looks off. There you go.
Yeah, it is a 2-pager in there. So if there's anything else as you guys are reviewing it, please let us know. Again, this is going to go to the Board of Public Ed. It'll go in the packet November 12th. So if you can get us any suggestions before then, that would be great.
Great. Thank you.
All right, we are now going to go back to consensus. So at this time, I'm going to pull up the entire early childhood education standards, the revisions that we've been working on, both last meeting and this meeting. And we will have a discussion now on forming consensus around the package of early childhood education standards. Folks, let me know if you want me to go back through any of this, but at this point, I will open it up for discussion. If there is no discussion, I will. Karen, how are you? Welcome.
Hey, sorry, I was driving for the first part of the meeting.
No problem.
I can live with our ratios and what we're doing with the paras. I just wanted to put a couple concerns on records so that if there are opportunities for further funding, as well as us as all as advisors, partners, we can help. You know, Head Start doesn't actually operate 4-year-old classrooms without 2 people in them at any level. And I totally understand and can live with where we are as school districts trying to understand how to do this. But I had a chance since our last meeting to talk to our Head Start that works with a handful of school districts in the state directly that's been doing the targeted literacy last year. And I think it would be really helpful for us to really help set schools up for success, especially those who have challenges either with their facilities. Bathrooms down the hall turn out to be one of the issues we've had with some sites, and there's fixes. But for 4-year-olds, it's not like kindergarten. The other thing is really helping schools, particularly those who've only got 1 teacher in the room, or maybe really limited para if their numbers, if we can help them with resources. I really like what OPI did the first year out with helping train, the roadshow, the materials, but really helping those schools that aren't as familiar with the developmental needs of 4-year-olds, especially when they've also got 1 or just barely past 1 person in those classes. So again, I'm going to live with what's in there on this, but I just wanted to bring that up, that I think we need some extra resources to really set schools up for success as they continue to expand it. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now, but I did talk to our programs about what went well, what didn't, and we felt really good about the schools that we were able to partner with, but those were some of the things that came up last year.
Hey, McCall, I'm sorry, I got to run. I'm in. So thank you for the right to participate today, and I'm sorry I got to leave.
Thanks, Lance.
Thanks.
Marie.
I just wanted to add on, since Karen mentioned it, that we have started the learning community of practice for early learning. Sorry, it's early, all the things this year. And like last year, we had Dr. Allison Wilson come and share her expertise on setting up a classroom like that. And so we are asking the people that have signed up for that community of practice what needs they have in terms of PD. So we'll make sure to keep that in mind. And Karen, that's open to anyone in the state. It's not just classroom teachers. So feel free to share that with your schools.
All right, any other comments? All right, so informing consensus. The opposite of consensus is dissent. So at this time, I will ask if there is any dissent around the early childhood education standards. If there is dissent, I will ask that you come to the table with a solution. So at this time, is there any dissent around the early childhood education standards? All right, seeing none, I will consider these as formed consensus. I want to thank you guys for your work on these today. I know we have the next steps and I will get to those in a minute, but I just want to say thank you. I know that, you know, there was lots of discussion on these standards specifically. And I just want to say thank you guys for sort of bringing us back and having good debate and discussion and being professionals around getting us to where we got today. I think that I'm hoping that we will have really good results at the end of the day. I'm hearing a lot of really good positive things from schools, and I'm really looking forward, especially to getting out in Missoula when we're there in November. I have already heard some really positive feedback from school districts and Hellgate specifically and Missoula Public Schools. And I just know that a lot of this is due to the work that you all have done over the last couple of years. And I just want to say thank you for that. Okay, next steps. Like I said, these rules are going to go to the Board of Public Education for the November 19th and 20 through the 21st. This meeting is truly a 3-day meeting. We will start Wednesday oh, Colette, did you want to go before I jump into next steps?
Possibly. I just wanted to point something out as I was reviewing my paper copy of the standards.
Yeah.
When you go to the 63-107, which is class size, I just want to make sure that matches. I may be looking at an old copy. I just want to make sure how we changed it from 1.5 to 1.
Mm-hmm.
Does the class size match in the standards?
I will pull this up so you guys can see it one more time. So this is what we did today. Probably what you have as a paper copy is old because we've made lots of changes. So this is what it looks like after the work today.
Mm-hmm.
There must be one appropriately licensed and endorsed teacher for 10 students for up to no more than 18 total students in a classroom with 2 adults. With classrooms exceeding 10 students, an early childhood paraprofessional is required at a rate of 1 hour per day per student overload, up to 16 students. At 16 to 18 students, a minimum of 1 appropriately licensed and endorsed teacher and 1 early childhood paraprofessional are required. School districts are encouraged to exceed these standards for classrooms exceeding 10 students with an additional staffing beyond the requirements of 2.
Okay. So when you just showed us the first page of the standards and said, any objections, anything different, you had just scrolled forward in this document. We were looking at the beginning
Yes.
of it.
Yep, sorry, I was talking about the document as a whole.
Yep. Okay. I just
You guys
wanted to
okay
make
with
sure we
that?
caught
Is that
that.
understood by
I
everyone?
have so many copies of it. I don't. Oh.
Sorry. Okay, was that understood by everyone? I guess I want to just make sure that that was the entire early childhood education standards as package. Okay, Lori?
Hey, just clerical on that first line in the black writing that's not changed. Do you want to change TEN to 10 so it's consistent?
Oh, no, I want to change this to TEN.
Because 10 or more, you know, we usually use the number, but I didn't know, just for consistency, it's down below.
Oh,
Yeah, so usually we, from 10 up, we do the number. Below 10, we spell.
okay. Yep, I can do that.
Just consistency. Yeah, thanks.
That's existing language. Will do. All right, everyone okay with that simple change? I'll make a note to go through and do that. Just right. Back and find my notes. All right, so we will start, like I said, Wednesday afternoon. Well, Wednesday at some point. I think there's a Perkins meeting that sort of doesn't involve the board in the morning. But this section, we are actually doing the discussion part on Wednesday afternoon and then the action portion on Friday morning. So I may send you all again, like the opportunity to Zoom in if you all are so interested. Last time Marie and I were there to sort of answer questions for the board, but I'll send you guys all the Zoom again if you guys are so interested in participating. You're always welcome to be there or to participate via Zoom, answer questions of the board. Last time they just had a few questions, nothing too intense. Although Marie, you actually did get quite a few questions, but I will send you the information to participate should you wish. At that time, like I said, they will go out for rulemaking. So I will update that recommendations document with some of the updated documents from today, and we'll get that out to them. And then the timeline you'll see in your packet for the rulemaking. I do want to make one clarification on this document. You'll notice that it says adoption notice to BPE for consideration, respond to comments in January. There is an option that if we don't get any comments, that we could actually adopt the rules in January. If we do get comments, that's not an option, but if we don't get any comments, I will be able to bring that to the Board of Public Ed for adoption. Just wanted you to know that all of this could move quicker if that is the case, so this timeline could adjust briefly. And that also would mean that I could potentially move the effective date up as well. So just wanted you to know that this would all be sooner than later. And then finally, I had mentioned the final report. Like I said, I will just update that. I'll send you guys all an updated final report as soon as I can get that moving and allow you all another opportunity to weigh in on that. Caitlin, what did I miss?
I don't think you missed anything. I think that everything is covered, and I think we're about ready to move on. I did just want to say that as we're closing up, I know that consensus can be really hard, and that, you know, the conversation today is really coming from a place of passion for everyone here, and you guys are all invited and we wanted you guys all be part of this group because you bring such value and expertise and perspective into this matter. And you know, at the end of the day, like, we all have to work together to move these systems and these policies forward, and we really want to make sure that we continue just to find a place of connection and reflection and respect for all these different viewpoints. So just a lot of appreciation for you guys sticking with it and working through some really difficult decisions and issues. And obviously this is a part of a rulemaking process too, so there's more opportunities, but just appreciate you guys all taking your time to be a part of this and work through all this work. So thank you.
All right, any last minute questions, comments before I open it up for public comment? All right, there is no one on, so I'm not even going to entertain doing that whole spiel. Last chance for thoughts, comments before we adjourn today. All right, thank you all again. I don't know that we necessarily need to meet again, but if we do, I'll certainly let you all know. Expect another email from me. Thank you all again. Really appreciate all your time. And as always, appreciate all you do. Thank you all. See you.